Tav Samach Vav, and we're up to a new mimer, Lehavin Inyan Lechem Mishnah. Know that on Shabbos we have lechem mishnah, we have 2 loaves of challah, and there's a difference between how Nigla says to hold the 2 challahs and how Nister, how Kabbalah says to hold the challahs. In halacha it says that you hold them one on top of the other, and then you cut the upper challah. Whereas according to Nister, according to Kabbalah, you hold it side by side. So to understand this difference of opinion between Nigla and Nister, what's the source of the debate spiritually? So let's first look at benching. So in benching, and the same in Ma'ain Shalosh, in Yahya, we thank Hashem and bless Hashem both for the food, which sustains us, and for the land, for Eretz Yisrael. And we do this because like Chazal said, the Marbrach stuff, yes, that we can say Baruch Hashem al Aretz Val Hamazon and Baruch Hashem al Aretz Val Paris because the land produces the food or produces the fruit, and therefore it's one thing. But either way, we mentioned both the food and the land. So if the land includes the food because the land produces the food, then why even mention the land? Also, the pasuk, which hints to benching, and it says clearly to bench, but hints to the brachas of benching. So it says, if you eat and are satisfied, you should bless Hashem. So first of all, Veirachta, bless Hashem, is for the food, and that corresponds to the bracha of Hazan, which Moshe established. Then it's the pasuk continues, ala aretz, on the land, and that corresponds to Noida and Balako, which ends off with talking about the land, and also early in the bracha talks about the land. So that's the second bracha which Yeshua established. Then the pasuk continues, right? The good land. What is the good land? This hints to the bracha of Rachem, which ends with Bnei Yerushalayim, because the Yerushalayim is called Hahar Hatov, the good mountain. And so we need to understand why in the first bracha do we not mention the land in Yerushalayim, whereas in the second bracha we do mention the mazon, which is this food which sustains us, which is the theme really of the first bracha. Okay, so to understand all this, let's first talk about eating in general. The pasuk says that we don't live based on the bread, but we live based on not on the bread alone do we live, but on the word of Hashem do we live. In other words, that in the food there is Dvar Hashem. Everything that exists is because Hashem makes it exist, and therefore that spiritual life force from Hashem inside the food is what sustains us. But the question is, why do we need that? We also have the Dvar Hashem inside ourselves, which should sustain us. So what does the food add more? So the answer is that when we say Yahya Adam, that the person should live, we're not talking about the Nefesh Bahamis, we're talking about the Nefesh Elikis, that the Nefesh Elikis lives through the food. And the reason the food helps the Nefesh Elikis is because it has a higher spiritual source. So although, of course, the Nefesh Elikis is clearly godly, and things of this world, the meat or the vegetables that you eat are not, but in source, they're actually higher. Because the Nefesh Elikis comes from tikkun, which is the organized, systematic godliness, whereas the food and everything of the physical world comes from tehu, which is unlimited wild godliness. Now, tehu shattered, and the kelim of tehu shattered, and they because 2 reasons. One is that the kelim were too small to hold the great, powerful light of tehu, and also because each sphere felt that it was the only thing and wouldn't cooperate and work together with the other spheres. So So therefore that it shattered, and there's sparks of this great spiritual light in our physical world. And when the person eats, so then he takes those sparks of godliness inside the food. And that, first of all, elevates the food back to the food source, but then it also elevates the person because his neshama comes from tikkun, and now the person has a taste of tehu. And that's why it says, ha-adam, the man. So it's not just regular man, but the man, meaning the nefesh of the yid. So now, Adam is gematria 45. 45 is Shema. There's different ways to spell out Hashem's names. If you spell it out, spell out Yud Kei Vav Kei is Yud Vav Dalet, then Hey is Hey Aleph, Vav is Vav Aleph Vav, and then the second Hey is Hey Aleph, so that equals the gematria of 45. And that is tikkun, where everything works in harmony. And then animals, they come from tehu, which is higher than tikkun. Now, tehu, in tehu, each sphera is just a nekuda point, and they're in a straight line. You have chachma and bina, and then you have the midas, you have chesed, gvura, tiferes, netzach, chayd, goes down the line, where without them mixing together and all sort of taking in a little from each other. And if you wouldn't have like chesed, gvura, etc., that we have in tikkun, a mixture of spheres. And from this light of tehu, eventually some of the sparks of it is in this physical world. And each animal has its own nature, and they're different from each other. They don't have like sort of a carefully organized system, including all the spheres, but they're heavily tilted towards one sphere. Like the ox is tilted towards gvura, for example, and they're without any inclusion of other spheres, and that's because they come from tehu, where every midah is by itself and can't stand the other one. And that's why it says about the kings of the Edom, who represent the spheres of tehu, that each one died and then there was another king, meaning because you couldn't have more than one sphere dominating at the same time without the other one being knocked out. And this is because each one feels its own self-importance. And because of that, yes, it's spiritual and godly, but it's centered around self, and therefore can't take another one. And that caused the shvira, the breakage. And then eventually it lowered and evolved low and low until it came to this physical world. Whereas if the midas would have had more moichin involved, a shine from moichin, from intellect, so then they would have been more calm, because midas, emotions, are all about how does this affect me, whereas intellect is all about what is the objective truth. And therefore, if you'd have a little bit of intellect there, that would have calmed the emotions. So in tikkun, on the other hand, it is Adam, it is the full person, and this is actually why the person, he has both sides, he has the right and the left, and the body reflects the spheres, right? Chachma, bina, das, chesed, gvura, etc. throughout the body, and they're all mixed together. And because there's more intellect, therefore it calms the emotions and let the emotions work together. And the reason why the spelling of Shema is with alephs, right? Vav, aleph, vav, and hey, aleph, is because the aleph represents, you have a yud at the top, a yud at the bottom, and a line connecting them in the middle. That's an aleph. So it represents balance. And therefore there can be iskalos, there can be inclusion, and all coming together. Because the intellect, like we said, it weakens the sense of self and the body. And this is especially in chachma, which chachma is kayach ma, the power of bittul, of nullification, humility, and that allows opposites to come together. You can have chesed and gvura. And chachma, which is the first sphera, it's where the Ein Sof, where Hashem's Ein Sof shines. It's the beginning of a shalshalus, but still takes in from beyond his shalshalus. And this is like with the person as well, that the chachma is, if he has a memory or a dream or an idea, where did it come from? it just came to him. So that's coming from the subconscious. Yes, it's within the spheres, but it's coming from the beyond, coming from the subconscious. And when we're at that state, then then in front of Hashem, where there's a gili of Chachma, which has in it Ein Sof, so then you can have opposites, the angel of Chesed, Michal, and angel of Gevurah, Gabriel, fire and water, all coming together. So we see, with this, with both with the person down here, but also especially with Adam de Leila, with this spiritual source of man, which is a godly level above. So it also has his skalos. It can include together Chesed and Gevurah, and that's the meaning of what Zohar says, that this is the secret of including the left and the right, which is from Shema, which encourages bittul. Whereas the food, which comes from either dom, tzemech, and chai, the inanimate vegetation or animals, so they come from tehu, and in tehu there's there's sources in the where there's no hiskalus. Yes, in the Merkava there's pnei aryeh, pnei shor, pnei nesher. There's the face of the lion, the face of the ox, the face of the eagle, and so which is a source of the animals down here. And also the trees and the grass, they have also a spiritual source above. And this Merkava is from Tikkun. So why are we saying the animal source is from tehu? Yes, it's their spiritual source in the Merkava, but when they come down here, Vov all the way down here, it gets mixed up with sparks of tehu. Next paragraph. So now when a person eats, so the person, his neshama is from Shema, from Tikkun. And then the food gets included in him. And when he davens, he elevates the food. And that's the idea of biurur, of refining the sparks of tehu. Now, because tehu came from a higher source, so therefore, after he elevates the food, so it also adds to him to bring down from the light of tehu, because he's now refined the kalim of tehu, and he receives from the light of tehu, and that is lifnei melech melech. This is it says that the kings of Edom were before there was a king for Yisrael, meaning that the kings of Edom, tehu, are in their source a higher spiritual power than Tikkun. And so therefore, when he refines, that helps him as well. So therefore, that's why the person needs food, because eating food helps his neshama elevate. And similarly, the spiritual man, the Adam de Leila, that also he is elevated through connecting to the animals and dom, tzemech, and chai, which have their source in tehu. And this is what the pasuk means, that when you eat, so you should bless Hashem your God. So this word bracha means to bring down something to Hashem. What is the meaning of blessing Hashem? Hashem is everything. But havaya lekecha means Hashem within his shalshus. And we're blessing Hashem, so to speak, meaning bringing down from beyond to Shem Havaya, which is from tehu into Shem Havaya, which is in Tikkun. And this is also the meaning of lechem min haaretz, like we say hamotzi lechem min haaretz, that Eretz is Shem Ban. The land is Shem Ban, which is the Hashem as is involved in the physical world in Gashmis. And what happens is that we bring out from Shem Ban. That's where you'll find sparks of tehu, and we'll be able to refine it, and then through that also help our neshama. Now, next paragraph. So now there's another type of bread, which is the mon. And the mon is lechem min hashamayim, which Hashem rained down from heaven, and it always came together with dew. And the mon came down in the merit of Moshe. right? We have the mon came down in the merit of Moshe, the clouds in the merit of Aaron, the bear, the well in the merit of Miriam. So Moshe was the idea of Shema at its highest level. In other words, Moshe was pure intellect, Chabad, beyond how Chabad comes into the midas, beyond how intellect comes into the midas. And therefore, Moshe said that he is kvad peh and kvad lashon, is he can't speak well, he has a heavy mouth and heavy tongue. So kvad peh means in Torah shebal peh, and kvad lashon means in Torah shebachsav. Because since in Torah you have to come to decisions and labeling that this is allowed and this is not allowed, this is chayiv, this is potter, kosher, pasul, etc. So because he was just about the intellect itself, not the intellect that as it comes into decisions in this world. And that's because Pnimius, the inner part of Abba, the father, which is Chachma, is beyond getting involved in lowering down towards the midas. And that's also why he said, Mi anochi, who am I? Chiyotzias b'nei Israel, to take out the Yidden, because why are we taking out the Yidden from Egypt? In order to receive the Torah. But the Torah is all about bringing down intellect into emotions and into practical decisions. He says, I'm not there. My neshama is just pure chachma. As Hashem answered that Anochi ehyeh impecha, I will be with you. So if Hashem is saying I will be with you, and Hashem's essence is with Moshe, as Hashem's essence is beyond all of this, and therefore the Chachma and Midas doesn't matter. Pure Chachma and Midas, they can all work together because there's a Gilead of Hashem's essence of Atmos, which is beyond everything. And therefore that makes everything equal and together. Dark and light is the same. So that's why Man came down in the merit of Moshe, because Man is also beyond. It's not like in general we have the two modes are Esrus Lasata, that we our arousal from below, like we discussed in the previous moment, and Esrus Ela, the arousal from above. And Tal, the Man, is beyond both of them. It's the pure Esrus Ela, the arousal from above, that is not coming as a response to the arousal from below. It's just a pure gift from above, from Hashem. And one came from Moshe because it was also from both of them are from the beyond, and they only have come down all together because of the Gilead of Hashem, of Ein Sof, of Atmos, that makes everything equal. And the Man is from Akudim. We know there's a number of different types of sheep that Yaakov received in his dealings with Lavan, and three of them are called Akudim, Nekudim, and Brudim. So there's Akudim is ringed, Nekudim is speckled, and Brudim is striped. And these three types of sheep represent high spiritual levels. So Akudim, the ringed, represents where everything is one, it's all ringed together in Ein Sof. And then Nekudim represents where everything is its own dot, represents El Mateo. And then Brudim represents in Tikkun, where all the different separate ideas and separate spheres come together and they coalesce. So this is, but unlike in Akudim, where there is only one, in Brudim there is multiplicity, but they can still find a common denominator through Bittul, and all be able to work together. So the source of Man is from this level of Akudim, where everything is one, and at that state, there wouldn't be any opposition or separation, even though it's very passionate light, because they are all one. Unlike in Brudim, where the reason why there's no separation is because they come together. And this is like the difference between the numbers 1, 2, and 3. So 1, there's only one, that's Akudim. 2 is where there's separation, Akudim. 3 is Brudim. So 3 is where you have 1 and 2, and then the third one brings them together. Next paragraph, So now we can understand why Moshe established the first bracha Hazan, because in Hazan we talk about Hashem in third person. We say Hu nosein lechem l'chol basar, that he gives bread to all flesh, because third person represents a sort of a high spiritual level. That's why it's something you can't quite see. You can't see in front of you. It's a little beyond. And Moshe is, like we said, Chachma, beyond Gilui, beyond revelation, and beyond involvement in Midas, just pure bittul. Then in the second bracha of Noida and the Birchas Aretz, there it says right from the beginning, Noida L'cha, we thank you. So it says L'cha right from the beginning. And that's because now we're talking at a low spiritual level, the lechem min haaretz, the bread from the ground, because Moshe was feeding his people man, whereas Yeshua is feeding them already bread from the ground, where there's a refining. We try to refine the physical and elevate it, and therefore the second bracha has and starts with noida and then continues that moedim lach, that we, in this word moedim, means, besides thanking, it means to admit, which implies humility and self-nullification. And so it's like the Gemara uses this term in Mishnah about, if, let's say, moedim chacham l'ramei, that even though chacham l'ramei have an argument in halacha, but in a certain situation, chacham agree, in that situation, Rabbi Meir would be right. So they admit to his opinion. And similarly, there's two opinions in general about reality. There's, so to speak, Hashem's opinion and our opinion, and that's what it means, kel deus havaya, that Hashem is a God of deus. There's two opinions. There's the perspective from below to above, and the perspective from above to below. So from the perspective of below, so then we are real, and Hashem is this obscure thing that we don't know. Whereas, so Hashem is the ayin, the nothing, and we are the yesh, we are the real thing. Whereas from Hashem's perspective, Hashem is the yesh and we are the ayin. So, and therefore, in the act of creation, Hashem is making us into a yesh, whereas through the Torah mitzvahs, the avodah of tzaddikim, of the righteous, they make that yesh, that something of this world, back to ayin, back to nothing. And that's why it says that the work of tzaddikim is greater than the work of Hashem's creation of heaven and earth, because in heaven and earth, it conceals the real truth that of Hashem, whereas in the tzaddikim's avodah, the tzaddikim's service, they bring it back to that everyone and everything should recognize that the true existence is Hashem. Over the page. And this is why it's greater. We know that, like the tradition, Chazal say that there's a tradition that heaven gives, but it doesn't take back. This is from the Gemara Tainis, Daf Chafei, where Rabbi Hanina was very poor, and his wife says, please daven for some parnasa, and he davened, and then he was given this golden leg from heaven. And then he had a dream that in Olam Haba, the other tzaddikim will have a table of 3 legs, golden table of 3 legs, and he'll have a golden table of 2 legs. He told his wife, and his wife says, this is no good. We don't want it now to miss out on Olam Haba. So he said, what should I do? She said, daven that the heaven should take back this golden leg. So he davened, and they took back the golden leg. The Gemara says that taking back is a greater miracle than giving, because heaven always gives, but to take back is a chiddush, is something novel. So what does it mean for us? That the Hashem's light comes down, it's nimshach into the world, and everything that exists, it's from Hashem is energizing it. Like it says, that Hashem enlivens everything, and it says, we say both in davening that Hashem renews everything in his kindness, and At includes all the letters, because At is Aleph till Taf, the full aleph base, and then the hey is the 5 parts of the mouth that we use to pronounce different letters, which different letters come from each of these 5 parts of the mouth. Because everything's existence is through the energy that is transmitted through the letters. Each one represents a certain spiritual energy. And these 5 parts of the mouth also correspond to the, they divide the energy and limit it, each one to a certain style. So it's a hey gvorus and connected to the 5 final letters, menatzapach. So we said that there's 2 opinions. There's our opinion, Hashem's opinion. So one opinion is as it looks from above, that Hashem is always shining and energizing us, and that's the idea of creation, to put us into existence. Then the other perspective is from down here. So we see us as yesh and Hashem as ein, and then the tzaddikim come and turn it back around, refine this world, and show how really everything is Hashem. And that's the idea of anachnu meidim lach, that we admit to you, we admit that the reality is Hashem's reality. And then it continues, anachnu meidim lach u'mevarachim, right? And we bless Hashem. There's a difference between haidah and bracha. Haidah is just admitting with bittul, whereas bracha is that we actually, to bring it down in a revealed way, that we actually understand, and that's our reality. So you could admit without really seeing it that way. Okay, you realize that perspective is truth, but you don't, it's still not your perspective. Whereas bracha is where it's revealed and you actually see how it's true. Like sometimes, let's say an experiment is made, it proves clearly a certain fact, but the person still would have believed that it should work the other way around. The scientists would have believed it should be the other way, but the experiment shows clearly that it's this way. So that's meidim, admit the truth. Then the second level bracha is that it should be revealed, Hashem's, that we should see things from a milmaila l'mata perspective too. Because through the tzaddikim zaveda of esrus delasata, they're given an esrus delela, roused from above, gili from above, which is the idea of bracha. Next paragraph. So now let's explain what is the idea of Shabbos. So just as the fact that we work 6 days and rest on the 7th is to mirror Hashem, who worked 6 days and rested on the 7th. So the 6 days represent the midas, that each day a certain one of the midas from Chesed to Yesod was revealed in order to allow for creation of the lower worlds of Biyah in a limited way. And then this light, it has to evolve and go lower and lower in order to create the lower worlds, because Hashem wanted a dir b'tachtonim. So let's say if a person has a deep idea and he wants to write it down, so in order to write it down, you have to limit the idea into words. That it has to go from chachma and bina to the midas, and then all the way until it gets the action that you can actually write down physical words that represent this deep idea that you had in your mind. So that is work. Then we have rest. So when you rest, then your inner abilities, your inner self doesn't have to stretch out into ma'aseh, into action. It can stay inside itself. And that's the real idea of rest, where the person is with himself, not extending outward. And that's what happens on Shabbos. So instead of Hashem's light extending outward, it's just internal, and therefore it's a deeper light. So both Shabbos and Mon are both to do with makif, are to do with the beyond energy, but there's a difference between them, because Mon is akudim, which means that all the different koiches, all the different spheres are all ringed together within one keli, 10 iris in one keli. So that means there is still different details, but all the details are together as one. Whereas Shabbos is a level even beyond that, where there is only one. Not all the details are one, but there is only one. And therefore, that's why in Shabbos, which is a spiritual energy beyond Mon, so Mon didn't fall on Shabbos. It's interesting how this mimer compares to the explanation of Shabbos and Mon in the previous mimer. So anyway, perhaps an explanation of the mashal for the difference between Shabbos and Mon is, let's say you have 10 different questions, many times different pilpulim, you can have many questions, and then there's one answer which answers all the questions. So then, in that case, that one answer includes the answer to all the questions, but you can still point to the aspect of the answer that answers each of the 10 questions. Then you might have another situation, like when the Alter Rebbe went and he to a big city of the misnagdim, of the opponents of Chassidus, and he sang a nigun, right? Kol Bali Shir, that he said that through nagina, through music, all your questions will be answered. And he sang a nigun, and that's exactly what happened. When he sang the nigun, they rose to a high spiritual level, and their understanding of Torah increased. All their questions were answered. So, unlike when you give one answer that answers 15 questions, when you sing a nigun and it answers all the questions, you can't point and say this part of the nigun answered that question and this part answered this question. But somehow in the nigun it answered everything. But you don't see exactly where each detail comes from within the klal. And that's perhaps a mashal for the difference between Shabbos, which is where it's just beyond details, and Mon, which is where all the details are united as one. Now, based on this, we can go back to our original, what we started with, which is about how on Shabbos we have the two loaves, and al pi nigla, we're meant to have them one on top of the other, whereas al pi נסתר, we're meant to have the two loaves next to each other. So, especially like what he mentions in brackets, that the two loaves correspond to Zachar and Shamar, which Zachar is Zaz, the six emotional spheres, and Shamar corresponds to God. Shabbos corresponds to Malchus, which the feminine sphere. And normally, in terms of how the order, the system of Hishalshalus looks, Zah, the six spheres are higher than Malchus. They're the giver, and Malchus is the receiver, receives from Zah. But that's only al pi nigla, if you look at it how it is apparently. But if you look al pi נסתר, the deeper truth, then you'll see that both of them are equal. In other words, from the perspective of Ein Sof, both of them are equal, and therefore the two chalas should be held side by side instead of one on top of each other. So this is why we hold them on side by why al pi נסתר we hold them side by side. Whereas the Maimon puts it that Nigla focuses on Yashar, the sort of Hashem's straight downward light, which gets more and more limited as it goes through the levels, whereas נסתר focuses on Chayzer, the rebounding light, where the bottom can be as meaningful and more meaningful actually than what seems to be higher. So this answers our question about the placement of the chalas and about the reason why in the first bracha it doesn't mention aretz. So based on our discussion, the first bracha is corresponding to Mon, and it would make sense not to include aretz in the first bracha as well.